I've been saying this for years now. Ford's CEO has come out and said this. I mean, this is admission by legacy automakers that they are screwed, that they're in enormous trouble. Hello, my friends. Welcome to the channel. I'm Sam Evans. You're watching the Electric Viking. Great to have you with us. If you'd like to join us as a member, that would be amazing. I'll put a link in the description below. Trying to get to 500 members. We're nearly there. Just need about 10 more. Would really appreciate your support. So, Ford's CEO, Jim Farley, says China is leading the United States by 10 years in EV batteries. And he said he's not just talking about production, he's talking about their IP. In fact, Jim Farley said that America needs China's IP. Ford desperately wants to head off the threat posed by the Chinese car industry. I mean, Ford's sales numbers are declining rapidly in places like China, which is obviously by far the largest auto market in the world, because of this advantage that the Chinese EV brands have. But it's not just the Chinese EV brands that have an advantage, it's also Chinese battery companies. And Chinese battery companies, in fact, control about 85% of the global battery market by some experts' calculations by the end of 2024. Now, I don't believe that's accurate. I think it's actually closer to around 70%. But the point is, China's technical expertise is making this happen. According to Ford's CEO, it's China's expertise that is giving them the ability to disrupt the entire automotive industry. CEO Jim Farley told the New York Times that China is a decade ahead when it comes to making batteries for EVs, and that Ford's only chance of getting on equal footing with the country's auto industry and then pulling ahead is to leverage their technology. Now, obviously, he's referencing the fact that Ford, Tesla, and General Motors have all signed deals with CATL, the biggest battery company in China, to manufacture their batteries, their lithium iron phosphate batteries, in the United States. But it sounds like both the Democrats and Republicans don't want them to actually build those batteries in America. The way we compete with them is to get access to their IP just the way they needed ours 20 years ago, and then use our innovative ecosystem and American ingenuity and our great scale and our intimacy with the customer to beat them globally. That's what Farley told the New York Times' Thomas L. Friedman. It will be one of the most important races to save our industrial economy. I mean, this is all pretty crazy, but at least he's admitting to the fact that America is basically screwed. It will be one of the most important races to save our industrial economy. We can beat them globally by using our intimacy with the customer. Now, it's pretty far-fetched. Basically, Farley's saying if we can kind of steal their IP, then all of a sudden build these battery factories and production lines all over North America and I'm guessing other countries around the world, and then suddenly somehow catch up. I mean, it's a moving target. That's the problem here. I mean, what IP are you referring to? Are you talking about their LFP batteries, or what about their solid state batteries that they've now got in cars that they're testing right now? I mean, what about the condensed battery from CATL? What about Geely's Golden Brick battery? I mean, there's the problem with this idea. There's so many different companies in China working at this from all these different angles. So once you think you've gotten the IP for one thing, something else has popped up. Farley isn't talking about some far-off future plan, but something that's already happening. The automaker's massive blue oval battery park is currently mid-build, and when it's up and running in 2026, it'll be churning out thousands of lithium iron phosphate LFP batteries that rely on technology from China's CATL. However, there's something that the West is claiming. The West is claiming that actually this all came from America, as in China's current battery technology came from them. I'm going to read you what they've said. This much we know. There's something we didn't know about CATL's clever chemistry. Maybe you didn't either, says carscoops.com. It was originally developed in the United States and then picked up for pennies by the Chinese. Referencing an earlier Bloomberg story, the New York Times says lithium iron phosphate was discovered by scientists at the University of Texas, then commercialized by A123 Systems LLC, a startup that received a ton of cash from the Obama administration. The EV market was slow to develop, and the A123 company went bust. The remnants of that company, including the battery IP, eventually were bought out by what at the time was China's biggest auto parts company. It's a pretty wild story, to be honest. And the problem with this story is that there's so many different types of LFP batteries now. Which ones are they referring to? I mean, obviously, this is not a reference to every one that's on the market. CATL have 6 different types of LFP batteries, right? They have high energy density, mid-level energy density. They have batteries now that are guaranteed to last for 1,000,000 miles. What about Geely's golden brick battery or their short blade battery? I mean, there's literally like 40 different types of LFP batteries on the market. So this whole wild claim from America, we came up with the LFP battery, I guess you could loosely claim that, but it's really irrelevant to today. I mean, there's so many different things going on. And the fact that China took some obscure battery, which to be honest, back then, it didn't take off because it wasn't very good. This initial battery was kind of crap, to be honest, that's the truth. And the Chinese made it way better. Now, initially they didn't. Initially, the first versions of this battery were actually not that good. And people were like, well, we're never going to see those in cars and EVs because the battery energy density is way too low. It's going to be too heavy. They were too heavy. Charging speed's too slow. The energy density is too low. But those things were improved upon by numerous different Chinese automakers. Numerous different Chinese battery companies. And they all raced against each other. They evolved, they developed this battery technology. It's not like it's one individual battery that you can make these wild claims. I mean, Bloomberg and the New York Times, I mean, they've kind of almost created a conspiracy theory here. Anyhow, hindsight is a wonderful thing. No one could have known a decade ago that EVs would become such a large part of the car industry, except Tesla. And Tesla was telling everyone, and they didn't listen. And Toyota sold their stake in Tesla, which would now be worth probably, I don't know, what, more than $100 billion. The Chinese figured it would matter, it would pay off, and the Chinese government saw this, and the Chinese government realized that their cities were polluted, and this pollution was causing massive health problems. And the majority of that, a very large part of that pollution was coming from internal combustion engine cars. So they poured money into this. Now, Tesla also did before any other Western brand. Every major automaker was working on EVs because they knew they'd eventually have to sell them to meet emissions goals, but they weren't really taking them all that seriously. CarScoop says that looking back from a 2025 vantage point, it seems incredible that the technology was allowed not just to leave US hands, but drop into the hands of one of its biggest adversaries, one that, according to Bloomberg, controls 83% of all lithium-ion battery manufacturing. Ford is working now on a sub $30,000 EV to battle affordable electric cars from China that haven't yet landed in the United States, but are making their presence felt in basically every other country around the world. And obviously, Ford has to compete in those countries with China. While tariffs on cars imported from China to the US protect Ford from the threat of the likes of BYD and Geely, XPeng, NIO, Li Auto, for now, they also make the Chinese-built Lincoln Nautilus more expensive once it's shipped to US dealers. And realistically, the fact here is that automotive companies can't exist in a vacuum. They can't just sell cars to Americans in America and, lose every other market. They have to sell more than that. The American automotive industry just isn't big enough for brands to exist only in that single country. So Ford, General Motors, and others like Toyota and Volkswagen, if they can't rapidly transform their companies and start building millions of electric cars over the next few years, the Chinese will take their market share. It's already happening. I mean, we know the numbers. BYD's already now sold more than 4 million cars last year. Think about it. 5 years ago, they sold 400,000. Now it's over 4 million. This year, they're on track to sell more than 5 million. The automotive industry is a zero-sum game. So companies are losing out. Japanese automaker sales are declining. German automaker sales are declining, and their automotive industries are shrinking. China is exporting more cars than ever before in record numbers. That's not about to slow down this year or next year. So Jim Farley is right. Ford need to do something drastic. But stealing the IP, I'm not sure that's a solution. I actually think it's too late for Legacy Auto. I think really they're all just passengers now on a trip that looks a little bit like Kodak or maybe Nokia, maybe BlackBerry. Take your pick. Guys, what are your thoughts? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree? Let me know what you think in the comments.